Hello everyone, it's Carissa. Feeling in a weird mood today. It's all the caffeine. I've been editing this video for a very long time. Editing is just so much fun. And I am finally finished, yay! Or I will be once I've posted this. I am not currently finished yet. Is that cuter? Should I have done it like this? I wanted to take you along with me on the making of my 1950s dress I made this summer. I know it's not summer any longer, but you know, it was like 75 here in LA today, so I'm pretty sure it counts. I had the general outline in mind of how I wanted the dress to look, but I really wanted to make it feel authentically vintage. So I did a little Pinterest researching, and these are the images that I used as a reference. And then this here is my sketch. As you can see from the thumbnail, it's pretty similar to how it turned out. The main thing I knew was that I wanted the bodice to have the adorable little shoulder ties. I just didn't know how the rest of the bodice was going to be shaped, and I was dealing with a limited amount of fabric, so I had to start off with a mock-up. Insert start of my story. This is my mock-up for the top part of the dress. It's looking a little funny right now, but that is because it's so hard to see in this light. I've drawn out the line of where I want it to go. I'm gonna have to take the back in just a little bit still, but that means I can bring the V just a little bit lower too, which is gonna be nice. So I'm gonna take this off. I'm gonna do just a little bit of cutting so I can see what the final piece looks like, and then I can take it apart and put it on my pattern. And we're back. So I have cut the sleeves a little, and I'm kind of thinking I like this thickness, but I might take it a little bit far over, but now I can remark where the bra strap is. It's right here. So I can just take the neckline maybe a little bit farther over. I am noticing I'm getting a lot of gappage here, which I don't like. I think I'll just pin it out right now and figure out where I want to take it out. It might be a matter of maybe I can incorporate it back into the side dart. It might be a little bit too long, but that's just because I have a really short waist. So yeah, I feel like I'm ready to go. I'll fix my pattern and then I'm ready to go into fabric. Alright, so I was just trying to tear the fabric across, that way I can get the correct straight of grain. And I figured I could just cut it through all the white gingham pieces, but I decided to tear it just to make it easier, and I'm glad I did, because upon further notice, this pattern is not straight. Look at how the white just disappears. So if you follow this line of white all the way across, it doesn't make it across. Oh, hello. You want to see too? Hi. Anyway, so I'm not sure what I'm gonna do, because this pattern, it's probably not super noticeable because it's a small pattern. What's weird is when you look up the side on the selvage edge, this is totally fine. This doesn't change. That's not gonna make a huge difference in the skirt, but it is gonna make a difference in the bodice. It's gonna alter how I decide to put the pattern on. I don't want it to look uneven or just a little bit off. I want it to look nice and straight and pretty. So I've got to figure out what I want to do about that. As you can see from my janky rulers here, I'm trying to show what's happening with the pattern, like how off it is. So I followed along the lines of this one white stripe, and as you can see, it kind of plateaus here for a bit, but then it just gets really far off. It's harder to see with this ruler. At this end, we're almost at 2 inches, whereas this end, we're at about 1.5 inches. And then in the middle here, we're at about 1 inch. It's a bit odd. It's odd, but I ended up deciding to just rip it, because this is the part I'm cutting out for the skirt, and I would rather have a nice straight hem than have a hem on the bias. It's gonna stretch all the time and I'm gonna have to fix it. but I will base it off of the pattern for the bodice because I don't want it to be uneven or look funny. So yeah, I'm going to start cutting out the skirt.
I wanted the skirt to have tons of volume, so I went with 3 panels of fabric, which gave it about 128 inches finished at the hem. Was it a bit excessive and not giving me much fabric to work with for the bodice? Yes. Do I regret it? Not a bit. Next up, it was time to cut out my bodice pieces. As you can see, the fabric is a bit damaged and faded in that one part there. I pinned around it so I could mark the faded places on the back of the fabric so it would be easier to place my pattern pieces. Try saying that 3 times fast. This is part of the reason I had to do so many mock-ups, because I wanted to make sure the pieces would fit in that small space without showing too much of the fading. I've had this fabric for a few years now sitting in my fabric stash, and I always knew I wanted to make a 50s dress out of it, but it wasn't until recently that I decided how I wanted it to look. I can't verify, but I'm pretty sure this is vintage fabric. It just feels so 50s to me. It's 100% cotton, purchased from a recycled craft store in Portland, Oregon. I had a little over 3 yards, about 3.1 yards to be exact, so I did a ton of measuring before any cutting to be sure I would have enough fabric. And this is the problem with sewing with cats. Alright, time to cut. I always give myself 1 inch of seam allowance at the alteration points, that is, the side seams and the center back. Everything else I gave a 1/2 inch. It's a theatrical costuming trick that I learned, and I can't seem to shake. It's really handy for alterations. Not that I usually take the time to alter things when they need it. And that, folks, is all that's visible of the faded spot. Time to start sewing. I'm terrible at remembering to pin my fabric before I sew. Oh, and I always forget I'm far-sighted until I try to thread a needle or use a pin, you know, the important stuff. I start by stitching all my darts first before sewing the pieces together. I stitch them from the outside to the point and then just tie them off rather than back stitching at the point. Yes, here we go, tying them off. And we'll just speed the other darts up. And yay, look at that, it looks like a thing now. And then I stitched the bodice pieces together. And there's the faded bit, right there, barely noticeable at all. I then overlocked all the side seams to finish the raw edges. Some people hate the overlock machine, but I love it. I'm too lazy to finish it any other way. Next up, I worked on the lining. I used a navy cotton fabric from my stash. In the back where I have the deep V, I stitched a small cotton tape along with the lining to keep the back from stretching out. I then understitched all the way around the lining. Getting up in the shoulder straps was not easy, but it looks so good when it's done, so it's definitely worth it. It keeps the lining from showing, and it gives it a nice crisp edge. Look how nice that is. And you can tell it's not going to stretch out on me. Once the lining was all understitched, it was time to put the straps together. I stitched together the straps right sides together on the actual fabric first, leaving the lining fabric free from that, if that makes sense. And then I iron those flat and sort of pocket fold origami it like so until the lining is also flat. That way I can slip stitch that closed and it's perfectly hidden. What dress is complete without pockets? Those are an absolute must. But I didn't have nearly enough fabric, especially with how gigantic I like my pockets to be, so I'll show you the trick I used. I thought I was being innovative and making this up for the first time, but then recently I saw Bernadette Banner using the same trick, so I guess I'm not innovative, but I'm still proud of myself. So I cut pockets out of a plain white cotton I have on hand, and then faced it with a little scrap of fabric that I had left. I stitched the fabric to what would be the inside of the pocket, the part that would show when I put my hand in it. And then I ran out of bobbin. Don't you hate that? So yeah, back at it. Pockets. So basically that's how it'll look. Actually, that's how it'll look. And then I stitched them into the skirt, making sure that the pocket faced the right way so that my piece of fabric was on the side closest to my body. Otherwise, what was the point? Also, sorry about the lighting here in the next few shots. The light from the sewing machine totally messes with the camera lighting, but if I'm stitching at night, it's really hard to see otherwise. And yep, that is my cat again. Next, I ironed that all down nice and flat, and before you ask, yes, that is my bathroom counter, and yes, by happenstance, it perfectly matches my ironing board. I live in a small studio apartment, so I have to make do with the small space I've got. I could probably get a full-sized ironing board, but it's just a matter of where to store it when it's not in use. Have you ever heard of fork pleats before? I discovered this genius hack last year and I absolutely love it. Perfect for math haters like myself. This keeps it nice and even without having to pin it beforehand, so it saves a ton of time. Let's just speed this up a little and see how fast we can go now, shall we? I chose to pleat the skirt rather than gather it because pleating causes less bulk at the waist, and I knew it could get quite bulky what with all the fabric I was using. It took some finagling, but I successfully hid both pockets in the pleats. You can sort of see one of them here, but I'll also show it once it's finished. I would recommend if you ever try fork pleating to find the straightest fork you can. Mine had a bit of a slope, so it was wider at the top towards the handle than it was at the tips, and this just made it a little bit difficult because I had to straighten each pleat out before stitching over it. Takes a bit more time, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Because it was only 3 panels, the pockets end up being quite close together in the front, but they were necessary, so I just have to get used to it. I was prepared to have to gather the skirt a wee bit to fit it to the waist, but somehow it ended up being almost the perfect measurement. I did have to smoosh it a bit when pinning though, but no true gathering. And here comes the cat again. I swear I could make a whole video with all the times he interrupts me. He's so cute, but so annoying. Fellow cat people, you get me, right?
Watch out, there's pins. Well, yeah, they're gonna be sharp.
So yes, that's why it takes me forever to make anything. But anyways, now back to our regularly scheduled programming. Here I am, stitching the skirt to the bodice. Now stitching up the back of the dress in preparation for the zipper. And then I just kind of sat there and stared at it for a good 3 minutes or so, trying to remind myself how to do a lapped zipper before finally giving up and watching a few videos on that. And now you'll hear me mumbling instructions to myself because this is actually attempt number 3 with the zipper.
This is why you do math. Well, this is why I should do math.
I just could not wrap my head around how to fold the fabric. I usually do centered zippers, I'm comfortable with those, but I decided a lapped zipper would look more like a pleat and would blend in better with the skirt. That took me down a large rabbit hole looking up extant garments to figure out, were lapped zippers even common then? Weirdly enough, this is not a subject someone has just written about, so please, someone get on that. Finally, I found a few examples of vintage dresses being sold on Etsy that had lapped zippers, so that was good enough for me. All right, here we go. Attempt number 3. Will it work? Yes, it will. That's why it's in the video. Now we get to the hemming. We are so close to being done, people. Here I am, just trimming it all down to an even length before I go ahead and fold it under to stitch it down. I gave it a 3-inch hem because I like the weight it gives. I've seen that in a lot of patterns and vintage dresses as well. Welcome to my living room. It is hand stitching time. It's super hot in my apartment because this is summer in LA and I couldn't run the AC while filming because it made way too much noise. Not like I'm using the sound from that anyway. Oh, look, a visitor. I swear, he only wants to cuddle when I'm working. Oh well, what else can I do?
He's being helpful. He's taking up all the screen time because we're filming right now.
Snuffles.
Oh, there we go.
Thank God for Kyle. This white cotton rickrack is vintage, from 1969. My Nana had an extensive sewing stash, and we kept a few things from it when she died. You can stitch it on by machine, but I wanted the stitches to be invisible and really secure, so I'm hand stitching it on here. Rickrack was super popular in the 50s. Usually I'm a lace girl myself, but I didn't think lace would work well with the fabric pattern. I'm super happy with this stuff though. It's adorable and works really well to give it that pop. Since I didn't put on the trim before putting on the zipper, I had to carefully fold it down so it didn't fray, but also looked pretty and didn't catch the zipper. In hindsight, I probably should have done the trim first, but I just hadn't decided how I wanted it to look yet. And now for the reason the dress was conceived. I needed shoulder ties. This is all the fabric that was remaining, so I had to cut it into as many bias strips as I could get so I could stitch them together into 2 longer ties. I pattern matched the heck out of them so you could barely tell they were pieced.
So I've got my bias tape here. Got a piece of twill tape. I'm just gonna take it and just stitch it to the edge of this. Then I'm just going to pin all this down to stitch right where I want to. Being careful not to pin or stitch into the tape. Now I will show you why I did this. You just pull on the tape and that will just turn it right inside out for you. And then you can just seam rip off the little piece of tape and use it again for your next strap.
Et voilà! Last but not least, this is the final step, I promise. I like to put these in everything I make to tell myself that they are done and they are beautiful.
After all that, this is all the scrap fabric I have left. That's it. That's it.
You guys, it's done. It's finally done. Now this is something I need you to know. I want you to understand the cost and value of clothing, so I'll price this out for you. Yes, everything I used was from my stash, so I will give you estimates based on current market value, which means it won't be vintage fabric. This price doesn't even include the time it took to do mock-ups, create the pattern, or the other things like the cost to run the machine, thread, etc. That would all add at least $200 more to the total, so I don't want to hear you going around commissioning things for the cost of the fabric. Sewing is an art, and you should always pay your stitchers accordingly. Okay, stepping off my soapbox now. I would never judge anyone who shops fast fashion. I still do that myself occasionally, but I want you to know how much it costs. Costumers are consistently the most underpaid of the theater profession, and since I work there and I live in LA, I know the struggles. That plus all the people who ask me to make things for them virtually for no money. It can get really disheartening. But let's just get back to some pretty dress pictures now, please.
Thank you all so much for watching my video. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and if you want to watch more, I'm pretty sure that's what I'm supposed to say right about now. Comment, tell me what you think, tell me if you hated it, you know, I'll read it. I'll deal with that. Anything else? Anything else? I have other videos now because now I am fancy. I don't know. yeah. So, thank you. Bye-bye.